I'm going to tell you a really incredible story that I have firsthand information on. The story begins at Loring Air Force Base in northern Maine near Limestone back in 1975. The 42nd Bomb Wing consisted of 2 air refueling squadrons and a bomber squadron. The bombers' mission was to support emergency war orders armed with nuclear weapons. I'd like to give you some background about the UFOs over Loring before we get into the details of the formation flight. A couple of weeks, or maybe even as few as a couple of days before this particular formation flight, a meeting was called by the 42nd Bomb Wing for all of the flight crews, for all 3 of the flying squadrons, to be held at the alert facility. So this was unusual. It was the first time that it happened for me in all the time that I had been there, so I was kind of curious as to what this is going to be about. So at the beginning of the meeting, a uniformed major says, listen, if you don't have a security clearance of at least secret, you need to leave. There was only a couple people that got up out of the couple hundred people that were there. The major started off by saying, if you haven't heard, there has been a UFO reported over the base, over the nuclear-armed B-52s that are on alert, over the nuclear weapons storage facilities that had nuclear weapons stored at them at this time. So it was very serious situation, and that's what this meeting was all about. It's hovering without making any sound. It does have a few lights. It moves erratically. It can move very quickly, unconventionally, rapid straight line movements, straight vertical movements. Can turn without any apparent radius in the turn. So it's a pretty incredible technology. The wing staff was pretty concerned about it, so they had notified SAC headquarters. And we were told, don't talk to anybody about it. If you have one of these incidents, you can talk to us, and we'll be debriefing you. But outside of this room, don't talk about it. And we're also concerned that the local press is going to get a wind of all the extra ground forces and the fighters that we're bringing in to help us deal with this issue. So we're going to tell them that there's a Canadian helicopter crossing the border and harassing us. So I think that's pretty incredible. But that's the background for the story that I'm going to tell you. We had departed Loring earlier in the day. It was a nighttime refueling mission. There were 3 KC-135s in this formation. I was the aircraft commander on the number 2 aircraft in this 3 airplane formation. Tankers formations were referred to as cell flights. There was a lot of vertical separation, a lot of horizontal separation. There was none of this, we're right flying like the fighters do, this kind of stuff. Now, we were way vertically clear, I think 1,000 feet, and I don't know, half mile maybe, so it wasn't very much fun. It was just kind of boring, actually, to be in a formation flight in a tanker. However, the mission was pretty routine. I don't remember, it was unremarkable in almost every way until we started back. And that's where the fun begins. That's where the action happens. So we are coming back from a refueling mission somewhere south of New York, offshore a little ways. I believe it was with F-4 Phantoms. Just a routine training mission for both the Phantoms and for us. So as we are somewhere close to, I think somewhere between Bangor and Portland, northbound, coming back to Loring Air Force Base, the command post at Loring contacted us, which was not routine, but not completely out of the ordinary. But when they asked the aircraft commander of the cell leader, the aircraft commander of the number 1 tanker, to change radio frequencies and stand by, they had an important radio call that they wanted to talk to me about. That was pretty unusual. So it didn't take me long to say, hey, I'm going to take one of my spare radios and go listen and see what this guy is going to get briefed on. So I tuned in. Number 3 tanker probably had the same curiosity. He did the same thing, I'm sure. And we're listening to the command post telling the cell formation leader, listen, the UFO is over the base again right now. And we want you to pass off the leadership of the formation of the cell flight to the number 2 aircraft. And then we want you, number 1 aircraft, to turn your lights out, turn your radios off, and head straight to the base at your own discretion. Altitude, airspeed, path, whatever, at your own discretion. Which is unusual, very unusual to hear that. Incredible, as a matter of fact. So I was quite shocked. So the cell leader acknowledges and says, will do. So the next thing you know, I'm getting a call from him. He's contacted me and said, listen, I just got special orders. I have to depart the formation. You're going to take over leadership of the cell. Let the navigators coordinate our positions. When you're ready, you got it. So the navs did that. I was convinced that we were where they said we were. I could see some of the cities, so I knew we were close. So I trusted the nav, and off we went to the initial approach fix. And the aircraft commander of the number 1 tanker turns his lights off. I don't hear any more communication, so he's now radio silent. And in the moonlight, I could see his silhouette, and down he descended into the darkness, heading straight for Loring Air Force Base. I would have loved to have traded places with him. So number 2, now the old number 3, and number 2 and I started to head to the initial approach fix, which is quite a ways south of the south end of runway 36. Runway 36 lands to the north. So going straight to the base is a lot faster, and everything unfolds with that aircraft as he approaches the base well before I make it to the initial approach fix. I start hearing tower channel frequency communications that are really exciting. I've heard some combat radio discussions during some bomb strikes with the F-4s. So, I can recognize a little stress in the voices, and that was definitely stress in these voices. I wouldn't call it panicked, but it was bordering on frantic as they're talking about, did you see it? Where is it now? Which way did it go? Oh my God, there it goes. And it's down on this end of the runway. It's over East Loring. No, it's back over the alert bombers. And that kind of communication back and forth, quite a few different people talking on the tower frequency. I don't believe I could hear the tanker's crew members chiming in. I'm not sure I would have recognized them. Maybe I would have. I do know that when the tanker is at elevation with KC-135, it's at elevation. The radar, forward-looking radar, has like 240-mile range. I'm not sure what it is. It's substantially reduced at ground level, and they were flying in really, really low, I believe. So the fact that they lost radar contact with the UFO in almost an instant is remarkable in itself. And then they said, I did hear the communication say something to the effect of, we've lost it. And then as quickly as the communications had started on the tower frequency, they ended. So that was kind of the end of the excitement. And my wingman and I continued our normal approach to runway 36. We broke up the formation just after we hit the initial approach fix. So I landed a couple minutes later. The second airplane landed, and we taxied in. It is in the middle of the night. There's not a lot of action going on at the base that we can see. And we proceeded to our squadron, normal debriefing room, had a couple of beers, filled out some paperwork, and we're dying to talk to somebody that knew anything about what had just happened out on the base. Couldn't find anybody that either knew it or dared talk about it. So that was kind of the end of that night. The tanker that had departed the formation and gone off to chase that UFO was absent from the briefing room when we got there. And then all of a sudden I remembered that, he must be debriefing the major, the same major that gave that meeting that I talked about earlier in this clip. However, the end of the story gets even a little bit more bizarre, because I see the aircraft commander of the first tanker. I'm not going to say his name. I've almost slipped a couple of times and said his name, but I don't have permission to get him involved in my UFO story, so I'm not going to say his name. I see him walking along in front of the base exchange, the BX over at Loring, just a couple of days after the flight, I believe. So I pulled my truck over and got out and went running over to him and said, "What in the hell happened the other night with that UFO?" And he looks at me and he goes, "I can't talk about it. I can't talk about it. You wouldn't believe me if I could talk about it." So that's the end of the story. And as incredible as it is, that's as true as I can remember. It's been a long time ago, but I had a lot of experience at the time of that incident, and I've had a lot of experience in the cockpits after that experience, but I've never had anything as incredible as that happen. Hope you enjoyed that story. I enjoyed telling it. Bye.
In the 1960s and 70s, these images of a vast underground security network allowed America to sleep at night, a security blanket of nuclear weaponry poised at the ready. But in the fall of 1975, someone, or something, tampered with our nuclear capability. Supposedly infallible systems were incapacitated. An unknown force was at work. Military personnel observed it, but could not stop it. Security was breached at 3 U.S. nuclear installations. At each base, eyewitnesses reported seeing unidentified craft hovering above nuclear storage facilities.
The speed it took off with, I've seen F-16s fly high rates of speed. And this was here and gone from a dead still hover.
One of the installations was here, Wurtsmith Air Force Base in Oscoda, Michigan. The base is closed now, but in 1975, it was on 24-hour alert, armed and ready for a nuclear strike. In October of that year, the practiced routine was suddenly shattered by an alarm. Radar was picking up an unidentified craft advancing toward the base at a high rate of speed. This was not a drill.
Stop rock with an expedite scramble. Authentication time is 1906. Scramble. Roger that.
On radar, the UFO appeared to be closing in fast, but jet interceptors could not locate any aircraft in the area. Author Barry Greenwood has spent nearly 20 years researching the 1975 incident.
There were at least a dozen U.S. and Canadian military bases that were overflown during a 3-week period in 1975.
According to this Defense Department memorandum, military personnel filed official sightings reports after visual and radar contact was established. In each case, the UFO appeared to be headed directly for nuclear weapons storage facilities.
The person writing the report stated that when one object came low over a weapons storage area, that it appeared to demonstrate a clear intent over this area, meaning it seemed to have intelligence. We've spoken to a number of eyewitnesses involved in the 75 incidents. They are all emphatic that what was seen was certainly not conventional aircraft.
One of the eyewitnesses to the Wurtsmith incident was civilian aircraft mechanic Rick Eberhardt. In 1975, he lived directly across from Wurtsmith's main gate.
One evening, I went to bed approximately 1 o'clock. I was awakened in the morning by a bright, glowing orange colored light that was coming in through our sliding glass doors. Bright orange, glowing orange, fluorescent orange. I don't think I've ever seen an orange that bright in my life. It lit up my house. on the inside like we had the lights on. So I got up to investigate, went to the sliding room doors, looked out over the creek. There was a large, glowing orange oval-shaped object. To me, it looked like it was probably about 2 to 3 football field lengths long and a good couple wide. It hovered over there for, I'd say, good 3 to 4 minutes. And at that time, it sped off at a high rate of speed, heading away from the airbase. I was scared. There was fear running through me, and I couldn't believe what I had seen.
Eberhardt's testimony is important because military eyewitnesses will not talk on the record.
It's very difficult to find military witnesses because they're, at the time, covered by regulations. They certainly cannot take a story like a UFO sighting and go running to the press with it. And I decided, along with several other researchers, to file Freedom of Information requests with the Pentagon, with the Air Force, with the bases involved to find out if there was some documentation as to what was occurring over these bases. And the Pentagon had advised the bases to invoke a Security Option 3 alert.
According to this Air Force document, the high-level security alert was ordered because, quote, penetration of sensitive areas during the hours of darkness have prompted the implementation of Security Option 3 at our northern tier bases, unquote. Sightings had occurred at Malmstrom, Wurtsmith, and Loring Air Force bases.
The reason this is so significant and interesting is that they seem to be focused on atomic weapons and some mysterious objects, which they call mystery helicopters. Some kind of unidentified objects were seen and tracked on radar flying around in areas where they had no business being. In fact, these bases, because of what they stood for, they were our massive retaliation capability, and therefore they were very high security bases with usually security police and guard dogs, barbed wire, alarm systems, all kinds of things that made them very highly secure bases. And that's why this is so significant, that whatever this was flying around could just penetrate all these defenses at will.
Timothy Good is the author of Above Top Secret. He believes the extent of the UFO invasion was far greater than the 3 incidents reported by the Air Force.
According to some researchers and some people who have come forward, there were several occasions when UFOs hovered over the nuclear missile silos when it was shown on the control panel that the missile would not have been able to have been launched.
Could UFOs invade and neutralize America's missile launch capability? According to ufologists, they could, and did.
Malmstrom Air Force Base, during the first week of November of '75, had several intrusions near missile silos, one involving an object which, according to one witness, hovered over the silo and somehow managed to change the tracking numbers on the missile. According to the witness, the missile had to be removed and retooled to make it work again. And to see this, not in UFO books, but in government military messages, was a real eye-opener. And I think that if the public had known that at the time, there would have been great alarm.
To the Air Force, Wurtsmith is a dinosaur whose extinction was made possible by the end of the Cold War. To ufologists, it's a silent reminder that UFOs have been among us and that their intent is clear.
So it's not the first time in UFO history, it won't be the last. There are lots of cases where these things were real and unexplained and flying in and out of these top security areas at will, and they had no control over it. This would cause them a serious problem. They can't say, we're defending you. They just can't. It's beyond their capability, and they shouldn't be held to blame for this. I just wish they would be a little more candid about with the public about what goes on in these cases.